Like, did you get a look at him?
The killer?
Yeah.
He's either Chinese or native. That's all I can say. 6 feet, 200 pounds, he's wearing sunglasses, bald head. He looked totally calm. He didn't say a word, I don't think, to anybody on the bus. I think he got out and had a cigarette with one girl. Nothing, just totally calm.
Wednesday, July 30th, 2008, was a normal day for 22-year-old Timothy McLean, who had just finished working a shift as a carnival barker in Edmonton, which is a city in the Canadian province of Alberta, population about 1.5 million. Timothy McLean boarded Greyhound bus 1170, which was traveling to Winnipeg, where his girlfriend Colleen Yeshraw was waiting for him. Once inside the bus, Timothy sat at the rear, one row ahead of the toilet, so preparing for the long ride home, he put his headphones on and listened to music as the bus traveled through the Canadian wilderness and often busy city streets with stunning skyscrapers. At around 6:55 p.m., the Greyhound bus made a stop in Erickson, Manitoba, picking up a new passenger who was described as a tall man in his 40s with a shaved head and sunglasses. His name was Vince Lee. Vince sat near the front of the bus, but after a scheduled rest stop in a nearby city, he moved seats and sat right next to Timothy McLean. Timothy didn't acknowledge Vince Lee. He simply put his headphones back on and rested his head on the window pane, dozing off into a short sleep. The bus would again continue the long drive to Winnipeg once everyone was back on the bus, but about 15 minutes into the bus ride, things would take a turn for the absolute worst. Witnesses on the bus claim Vince Lee produced a large knife and began stabbing Timothy in the neck and chest. Seconds after the attack began, the bus driver pulled to the side of the road. He and other passengers rushed in an attempt to save Timothy's life, but were chased away by Vince Lee, who slashed at them with a large knife. At this point, the rest of the passengers were already off the bus, understandably panicked, trying to make sense of the entire situation, but things would only get worse for onlookers. Vince Lee decapitated Timothy and displayed his severed head to those standing outside the bus through a window. He then returned to McLean's body and began severing other parts of his body and consuming some of McLean's flesh. Witnesses would state that this continued over the next few hours during a standoff with the police. Police arrived to find the suspect still on board the bus, barricaded by the bus driver and a truck driver who provided a crowbar and a hammer as weapons. The rest of the passengers were huddled at the roadside, some of them crying and vomiting. Police summoned special negotiators and a heavily armed tactical unit. The killer paced the entire length of the bus, back and forth, shouting, "I have to stay on this bus forever." Vince Lee attempted to escape from the bus by breaking a window, but was shot twice with a taser, handcuffed and placed in a police cruiser shortly after. Parts of the victim's body that were found on the bus were placed in plastic bags, but during another search on Vince Lee, they found an ear, nose, and tongue in his pocket. The victim's eyes and part of his heart were never recovered, but are presumed to be eaten by Vince Lee. The stranded passengers were taken from the scene to be interviewed by police. One witness claimed he was shocked by Vince Lee's demeanor during the attack. There was no rage or anything. He was like a robot, stabbing the guy, the witness claimed. This case took an extreme toll on everyone involved, with some people having to go to psychological therapy for the horror they were exposed to. In July of 2014, one of the first officers on the scene, Corporal Ken Barker, had committed suicide. The family stated in his obituary that he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Timothy Richard McLean was born on October 3, 1985, in Winnipeg, Manitoba. He was 22 years old at the time of his death and had been working as a carnival barker. He was described as an adventurous person who loved to travel and meet new people. On December 21st, 2008, 5 months after McLean's death, his girlfriend Colleen Yestraw gave birth to a son. McLean's mother has described her grandson as a gift from God sent by my son to give me a reason to get up every day. Vince Lee is a free man living under a new identity. He was released May 8th of 2015, only serving 7 years after he was found not criminally responsible for murder after it was determined he was schizophrenic. Vince Lee has in previous interviews expressed feelings of humility and torment for his actions, adding, "I always ask myself, what if it had been my 25-year-old daughter?" To this day, the seemingly random act of extreme violence carries heavy weight on many Canadians in the province of Alberta. The battle between good and evil is evident in our everyday lives.